This is the Last Minute Blues Podcast with Alex Ferrario, Donnie Fandango, and Jeremy Rutherford on 101 ESPN.
The Last Minute Blues Podcast is presented by Blue Note Roofing. Roofing, siding, and gutters. Your St. Louis roofing experts. Visit BlueNoteRoofingSTL.com for free inspection.
It is the Last Minute Blues Podcast. It's presented by Blue Note Roofing, roofing, siding, and gutters. Your St. Louis roofing experts. Visit BlueNoteRoofingSTL.com for a free inspection. Donnie Fandango joined in the Jeff Burton studios by Alex Ferrario from 101 ESPN. He's also handling all your Blues pre- and post-game. Sitting across from me, Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic, handling the beat writing and such for your St. Louis
And right
Blues.
now, the trade rumors that will be taking place for the rest of the year.
Let's not get into that. Hey, Alex.
The thing that everybody wants to talk
The
about.
whole reason we're here. Let's not get into that.
What's it been like not doing pre and post every other day for the past 2 weeks?
What's it been like? It's been incredible, but also weird because I don't know what to do with myself typically in the evenings.
You guys are Katie, I'm Alex.
That's really what it is.
You have replaced screaming Blues fans with your screaming children.
Yeah, but the only thing is the screaming children don't tell me that I'm an idiot the whole time. They just scream because, I take away the Barbie doll. I say, hey, don't wear that dress at dinner. Don't put your sister's hair in that ranch dressing. Can you please take your clothes off and get in the bathtub?
Your girls don't scream.
No, not at all. Not at all. Are you kidding me? My middle, Emma, when I told Donnie this the other day, she is the stone cold killer with this personality. When we were out at Hot Shots for the live podcast that we did with Tony Twist, Donnie walked up to her because she had just gotten there from dance. She was sitting there with my mom and dad. They were eating chicken fingers. And Donnie walked up and I said, baby, this is Donnie. Daddy works with him on the radio. She turned and went like this.
Yeah, man.
I mean, it was the most judge-filled
It was
stare.
awesome.
Yeah, she's like, you can back away from me. And Donnie's like, cool. Nice to meet you. I'm out.
Chicken fingers and fries. I'm stepping out.
Donnie,
I
I
understand.
make a big deal, but I got a hug, so.
Oh, yeah, definitely not for me. All right, well, we have a lot to talk about here, boys. I mean, there is a bunch going on, Olympic-wise and otherwise, but I wanted to start off with kind of a fun story today, if it's all right. So today is the birthday of wrestling legend Ric Flair.
105? How old is he?
105. And he's going to wrestle again.
That body has got to be 150. I mean, honestly.
What's worse, his body or Sonny's body?
Oh, gosh. Unfortunately, Sonny's probably closer than he probably should be. And Flair's got 40 years on him, probably.
Flair's is all staged, sorry, the wrestling fans, but Sonny's is all real deal, rubber coming at him.
Deal. So a bunch of years ago, and I don't exactly remember how many years ago, I had an AEW wrestler who's in the WWE now named AJ Styles in the Point Studio. And at that particular time, Ric Flair was acting as his manager, his corner guy. So it was supposed to just be AJ Styles coming into the studio, but we got word late that Ric Flair was going to join him. Ooh. And I was like, whoa. All right. So I prepared for this interview as best as I could. And in all of the wrestling interviews that I had always done before, I would get the wrestler in character on the air, and then when the microphones are off, then it's just regular chit chat. All right. So Flair comes in with AJ Styles, and we hadn't got on the air yet, and AJ Styles is very talkative, and Flair's saying nothing. I mean nothing. He's literally sitting in the corner of the studio, and he looks pissed off that he's even there. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, this is not great. Not great. So we put on the mics. We start talking about this match that AJ Styles has coming up in town. And I start talking about his opponent and how fantastic his opponent is and how he was on this streak and blah, 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 blah. And I mean, like a freaking rocket ship out of the corner, Ric Flair grabs the microphone and starts yelling at me about why I would second guess AJ Styles' ability in the ring, on why am I qualified to be. And I mean, he is lighting me up left, right, and center, and it was the greatest time I have ever had.
Tell me you have
in my
this
life.
audio.
I do not have the audio. No,
He didn't hit record like that one time.
Oh no, unfortunately.
No.
So we do this, and he's getting into me so much. I'm starting to wonder:
Is this real?
Is this real? And is this dude really going to hate me? So we go to take the first break, and she goes, "How's that, kid? How's that? Was that cool? Was that good?"
He said that to you?
He said that to me, and I was like, "Oh my God, that was amazing." So we just chit-chatted for another couple minutes, turned the mic back on. Here it comes again. He's berating me. He's like pointing, he's interrupting me. He's like, and I cannot get enough of it. So I just keep talking about this other wrestler. Just to kind of keep him going and keep him going. And it was literally the most fun interview I have ever had. And then when we got done, he's like, "Oh, kid, that was so great. We had so much fun. Do you want to take pictures?" And he's putting arms around everybody. He's taking pictures for everybody. He was freaking amazing. Legitimately one of my very favorite memories in doing radio.
What we didn't know, Jer, was this was actually the start of Donnie's pro wrestling career. He's been Rey Mysterio for the last 20 years.
Dude, and I'll tell you, I haven't interviewed a wrestler in a while, in some years, but it was always very fascinating to me the way that those cats can turn it on a dime. Like, you'll be having this uninteresting conversation with them off the air, and you're like, "God, this dude is Captain Dolesville." And then the second that microphone comes on, they have the ability to turn it on. Rey Mysterio was one of those guys. Like, it was like, I was so excited to meet him, and like, it was kind of dull off the air, but once we got on the air, he just hit. And so it was just with hearing that it was Flair's birthday today, it just makes me remember that and smile and think about getting yelled at by him. And then I remember going home that day, and I could not call my dad fast enough to tell him what was going on. And my dad was like, "Did he do the woos?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, Dad, he did it like 50 times."
While he was pointing at me and yelling at me.
Just so amazing.
Incredible.
And that guy, you talk about a flipping cat. That guy's got to have 9 lives, maybe 18.
Is that the most famous athlete you've ever interacted with? Not like in passing, but like have a conversation with?
No. I had a chance to do a probably about a 20, 30 minute sit down with Hulk Hogan.
Oh, okay.
And that, dude, that young Donnie was literally out of his mind. And what was kind of cool about that day is and this I think happened not very long before the Ric Flair thing, he came to us and so we were told to go out and meet him outside of the station. So a limo pulls up at Union Station, and out of the limo with megaphone in tow is Jimmy Mouth of the South Heart. And I was like, "Jimmy, what's going on? I'm Donnie. I'm going to be doing the interview." And he's glad handing me. And then the one thing that was also very alarming about that was watching Hogan get out of the limo. Like, it took a minute. Yeah. Like, you could tell that like his bottom half was
not working.
Was not working very well. But I would think those would probably be those two would probably be the biggest. And then in the sports world, like, I don't know that I've interviewed anybody particularly, really particularly massive. I had Tim McCarver once, which was an honor for me. I know people didn't like him towards the end of his run here with the Cardinals, but I just always loved him calling games. So that was a really big thrill for me to get to talk to him about catching Bob Gibson. But I think that's...
I can't ask JR this because JR's been doing this for 30 years, and that's like a daily occurrence.
You probably have Wayne Gretzky's phone number in your phone.
That's under.
He does
99.
actually.
Yeah. My son said, "I don't see his name." I said, "I don't put his name."
That's smart.
But hey, it's not my birthday. But let's go, Ric Flair on Donnie here. What do you want to trade, Jordan Kyrou? What do you want from the guy? 40 goals. He's a 50-goal scorer. Donnie's gonna do it. What do you want?
Dudes. First of all, well done. I love it. And like, the thing that kind of sucks about the whole wrestling thing is once my oldest son, Benjamin, stopped watching wrestling, like kind of grew out of it, I stopped because I tried to watch it by myself and I just felt weird.
I watched it with my dad growing up and I stopped, he stopped, and then it was just kind of like, you get away from it so long, you go back, you're like, what is happening right now?
Yeah, man. Yeah. Anywho, so happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, Ric Flair.
Mr. Flair. So, guys, a lot of stuff has transpired over the course of the last week. Since we met, the United States wins an absolutely thrilling gold medal game against Canada.
USA.
All of those things are great, but one thing is not great about it. It is absolutely absurd to me that you end a freaking gold medal game with a 3-on-3 overtime. And I saw the IIHF guy come out, I think yesterday or the day before, and say that those rules are staying in place. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah, well,
what a terrible way to end a freaking gold medal game.
Let's call a spade a spade. Why IIHF has that rule in place is so that they can get through the ceremony, or they could get to the closing ceremonies faster. The 3-on-3 overtime means you're not going 5-on-5, 20 minutes, and then a double overtime or a triple overtime, because they got to keep things on clock.
Yeah, but we shouldn't treat this like you got to make time for the 3 o'clock
closing ceremonies.
U16 game or whatever. Like, you got to rush these people off the ice. It was just, now selfishly, I could have watched an infinite amount of what was going on in that game. It could have gone on for forever. But I feel like there's got to be a better way to do this. And I just cannot imagine another game that good ending that way. I just think it stinks.
So here, I've been revved up on this for 3 days. Like, you've probably had to do multiple interviews since then about the gold medal game and things. I haven't been on the air since last Tuesday. So I watched that on Sunday, and it was just pent up anger, which doesn't happen a lot with me. But I'm watching this and I'm thinking, how in the hell are they going to end this gold medal game with 3-on-3 overtime? But the part that really set me over the top, and I don't want to come off un-American because I'm so pumped that USA won that game. It was a massive game for them, and we'll talk about that, of them beating Canada. But how are we going to sit here and compare it to the golden goal in 2010 when Sidney Crosby scored it, or act as if it's the biggest win since the 1980 Olympics? Now, I know it's the first time that they have won since 1980 USA, but man, that was just a different level of competitiveness rather than the 3-on-3 overtime. I think my spirit into it, my excitement, my enthusiasm would have shifted if that would have been a 5-on-5 win. And again, I'm not taking anything away. That was a hell of a game. And frankly, it's more impressive that USA won in 3-on-3, because that's probably Canada's expertise with how much speed and skill they have. But still, it's not taking anything away. It just waters it down a little bit to where it's like we're acting as if this is the biggest gold medal event that we have ever seen, and we're going to start making Disney films about it. If it was 5-on-5, I think I would have had a different feel about it.
No, I'm with you. I mean, I don't think there's anybody out there that said, no, you got to keep the 3-on-3. Like, I even Big Wall Kachuk.
Heard him this morning.
Got to get rid of the 3. But the rules are the rules. Yeah. And as Alex said, I was telling somebody next to me, we were watching the game. I said, the U.S., it's great if you get to overtime, but they're going to lose that overtime because it's going to be McDavid to McKinnon goal. It's over. Bang. Thanks for coming. And that didn't happen. Now, I guess I kind of didn't give the U.S. enough credit for their skill players like a Jack Hughes. And,
for sure.
And Werenski made an unbelievable play. And ironically, the 4 Canadian players who were on the ice, Jordan Binnington was the least at fault, even though it went 5-hole.
I know.
You're talking about McCarr not getting back. You're talking about, McKinnon hesitating. You're talking about McDavid kind of looked in no man's land there. And then the goal scored. So I agree with you. A 3-on-3 gold medal game. I don't care if you go past the closing ceremonies. Announce at the closing ceremonies. The game's still going on. They're in the 6th period.
Just put it up on the jumbotron at the closing ceremonies.
It just is what it is. But I think it wasn't Crosby. It was 4-on-4 when he scored, right?
It was.
So you want to see 5-on-5 hockey, but guys, I mean, this was just absolutely phenomenal. I'm sure you guys have seen tons of videos, celebrations, the young kids. We interviewed Gary Bettman yesterday downtown, and he said, the young kids that are watching that, you're just going to grow up. And
I think I heard Walt say that 1980 was influential on him and was on so many people to get into hockey. Then the 96 Olympics were very influential for a lot of younger kids. And now you're going to have this one where especially you're going to start to see a influx of young kids in country or in state cities that typically don't generate hockey talent. They watch that and they're like, man, I want to try this sport. That's how it goes. And I'm so thrilled that it was as successful as it turned out to be, because there was concern of, what it was going to look like. You knew it was going to be competitive, but, the NHL was kind of iffy on wanting to send the players there. All of the injuries that happened, people are concerned about. Russia not being there. Like, there was so much that you were like, boy, I hope this turns out successful to where we continue to get NHL players. And once again, the NHL is going to flourish off of something that they had to shut down business for 3 weeks.
I think what is potentially very exciting about this, listen, before I say this, I want to say, whatever happens with Russia, and I don't want to get I don't want to get political, like literally in the slightest, but whenever Russia is allowed to play in the Olympics again, you are going to have a team that has not played an international competition in a number of years, and they are going to be looking to whoop that ass. And then on top of that, you are going to have in 4 years a Canadian team that has been hearing for the last 4 years how they lost to the U.S. And if you don't think that's going to have them freaking burning to get back on the ice, you are absolutely bonkers. The U.S. continues to grow and grow and grow, both the men's and women's programs. You see a Swedish team that, there were some injuries there. There was some weird coaching stuff. There was, there's a Finnish team that pushed to the end. There's Slovakia. Like, the thing that's so exciting to me is not only how good this is now, but how good it's going to keep getting.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine that tournament with Russia in it? Whoa,
well, and it's not even 4 years, right? World Cup is in 2 years, correct? The end season tournament that they're going to play.
And I don't know if they'll be lifted from international competition, all those sorts of things now. And it will just be great to have that team out there when you're really talking about best of the best players.
Here's to hoping that if it happens in 4 years, that Alex Ovechkin, when he's like 45, 49 years old, is still got one more in him.
Dude, try to pull the Jaromir Jagr and just friggin' keep going.
Jagr did it until he's 70, so why not?
Let me ask you guys this question here real quick. Obviously, Dalibor Dvorsky had an absolutely fantastic Olympic run. How would you kind of, in general, what would you say about the Blues Olympians and how they played?
I was talking to Curbs about this yesterday at practice. I feel like it was successful for everybody. I mean, Broberg, he didn't put up points, but I think he was top 3 in ice time, if I'm not mistaken. He averaged about like 25 minutes a night. He finished as a plus in that tournament, which I have a distaste towards Erik Karlsson because he doesn't know how to play defense. That was his pairing partner. And if you can finish a plus in a tournament with Erik Karlsson, that's a pretty significant badge of honor if you're Broberg. Pius Suter, I feel like nobody's talking about Pius Suter, who was like Captain Switzerland there in that tournament once Fiala went down. You mentioned Dvorsky. I thought Binnington did exactly what Binnington needed to do. Parayko kind of just flew under the radar, but was fine through the tournament. So I felt like it was kind of a passing with flying colors for all of the Blues players.
Yeah, all of them. Pius Suter coming off the high ankle sprain. And, if you go into it saying, hey, these are your 5 guys, and the name you're probably not going to hear a lot about is Broberg. That's probably, to be expected. He probably, did his job. I think as we talked about last week, Dvorsky is going to gain the most. If I were putting together a list of the top 5 storylines to watch in the final 25 games of the Blues regular season, Dvorsky would be right there at the top of the list. How is he going to kind of catapult himself after such a fine performance there? And with Binnington, he played well. Was he lights out? No, but he made saves that he shouldn't have made. And I think on the goals that Canada did allow, you could point to 3 other mistakes by the all-world team in front of him. To me, if I'm Binnington, I don't want to say I'm glad it's over, but man, I'm glad it's over. Yeah. It's like, can you imagine the 3 weeks leading up to that, knowing, you're going to be the guy in this?
Are you glad it's over? Because now you have to come back to what you went through in the first 3-4 months of the season, where it's back to the old drawing board with a rough team in front of you.
You do, yeah. I guess when I say glad it's over, I mean from just the pressure standpoint.
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't deal, but when I think about, I got something in 3 weeks that is going to be a crap ton of pressure.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, but he dealt with it, and he thought he played well, handled himself well. So we'll see once he gets back in net how he looks, and then just where his storyline goes in terms of the trade.
That was the thing for me with Binnington. It's like, look, he wasn't what Connor Hellebuck was. Hellebuck was incredible, and I think he's going to take a lot of naysayers away of saying, well, you can't win big games. Now you got to do it in the playoffs, but he won a big game and was the best player on the ice. I think if you're looking at Team Canada and you're frustrated, I know there's people like your boy Dom over The Athletic, frustrated that Canada lost and looked at Binnington. I think there were goal scoring problems and defensive problems before I would sit here and be like, well, your goaltending was a big issue in this one.
If you were kind of dissecting Team Canada, you guys, what do you think they did not do? Or do you think that there's a glaring thing that they did not do?
Score.
Yeah, a score. But man, didn't it feel like they just didn't get bounces?
Yeah, they didn't get some bounces, but they didn't score. Like, the puck's right there for McKinnon to bury wide open.
Yeah, that was there.
And
his comments afterwards.
They were coming back in the tournament and they were needing, just like the U.S., but, quarterfinals, you got to win in overtime. Like, they're a dominant team, and their star players weren't making enough plays to, get them a 3-0 lead.
I thought, just watching Team Canada versus Team USA, Canada's got they're deficient in defensemen. Like, I thought USA was clear-cut better in terms of their defensemen, and it's weird to say because they have Cale freaking Makar on the other side, but, Drew Doughty's up there in age. You had, because Morrissey's injury, you had Sanheim, I believe, was playing in that one. And, I mean, you're talking about Werenski, Quinn Hughes. You're talking about just dominant from top to bottom. I do think Canada missed a little bit of, I think they probably would have had a little success with Matthew Schaefer on that team. I mean, mobile defensemen that can actually generate more offense. I don't know if they had enough of those guys.
Yeah, and a Pietrangelo if he's healthy.
Yeah, Pietrangelo playing as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
Noah Hannafin on USA's side. So, I mean, like, they had mobile defensemen that generated offense. And I don't know I think Canada had a couple of those guys that generated offense when you need 6 to do it if you're going to go up against USA.
I just want to say this here real quick. No disrespect to our fine United States of America and our jerseys, but those freaking red Canadian jerseys with the black maple leaf on it. Ooh,
sure. Those were good.
Buddy, those are cold.
I felt like those USA ones were sick too.
They were sharp. I think I liked them all. Really.
Yeah.
Like, there were even a couple of the Swedish jerseys that I thought were pretty bad.
Slovakia and USA playing against each other was a little confusing at times.
That was a little rough.
Who's that?
Yeah.
Need to get better eyeglasses.
All right, so let's do this. Let's take our first break. Let's come back. Blues getting ready to absolutely motor through the rest of this schedule. So let's talk about that next segment of the Last Minute Blues podcast on the way next. All right, guys, I believe I heard something crazy about the Blues schedule or about the NHL schedule. Something like 27 games in 51 days. I mean, it is an absolute true sprint to the finish. We've got the trade deadline on the way. So as the Blues get ready to get back on the ice tomorrow night against the Kraken, as we record this on a Wednesday, there was a minor league deal made yesterday with the Thunderbirds. But what else is going on in the world of our Blues, since we haven't seen these fellas in freaking like a month?
Yeah, a lot's changed in terms of who's available, and I know we got some news on Robert Thomas, but I've been at 2 of the practices this past week, and you have Robert Thomas has been skating. Dylan Holloway is skating. I think Holloway is going to play. With Robert Thomas, looks like he's going to be away from the team for a couple days. You have Pusitter obviously back from the Olympics. He had the high ankle sprain, but he's playing, and you can pick it up from there, Alex.
Yeah, well, and you got all of these guys that are coming back, so we still haven't seen Dvorsky yet on ice after the Olympics. At least he wasn't there on Tuesday. My guess is he'll be there Wednesday, for sure on Thursday. Binnington, Parayko are the other ones you're waiting on, but with Thomas's absence from the team that the Blues announced earlier today, you kind of look at that and you say, all right, well, where's this one going to go from here? How do they formulate these line combinations? How are these going to work out? I think in terms of storylines, watching these guys come back, you've got Dylan Holloway, who's going to be back, and what that looks like. On top of that, they're keeping Pavel Buchnevich at the center position. Oh. So that line of Kyrou and Neighbors that ended the portion prior to the Olympic break, they keep them together because they were having so much success offensively. Montgomery said on Tuesday that, look, our offense was playing well going into the break. We hope that can continue. It's a matter of defense on the other side. And then from there, it's just a matter of what do they generate. You're watching Jack Finley join the team. You're watching some of these other guys jump back in. So on ice product, I'm going to be fascinated to see what it looks like, because the guys that played in the Olympics, I'm assuming are going to be raring to go. On the opposite side, the guys that haven't been, you're going to get a little bit of needing to level back up to the level that they were playing before that break.
So is this with Robert Thomas? Is this a continuation of the injury sort of thing, or
I anytime it's and the way that they Blues labeled it was personal leave. Anytime it's a personal leave, it's never team related. It's always the individual, something with the family that he needs to attend to. You're away for a little bit and then you come back.
All right, right on. As far as the trade deadline goes, are you guys starting to hear, I would assume that the rumors have got to be picking up, and one in which that I've heard, and I believe that it was the Jeff Merrick podcast, but I have heard maybe rumblings that maybe Jordan Kyrou and his representatives have said to the Blues, maybe
time for a break.
Maybe a change of scenery would be good for all parties concerned. Have you guys heard that? Are there any other snippets of things that you've heard that you're able to share with us?
Sorry, guys. I think I have a puck in my throat.
Are you all right, man? You all right?
Dying over here.
Dying a little bit. But, we'll jump right into what are you talking about? Kyrou.
Where are we at right
Imagine that. We could jump into any part of the pod, and we're going to jump into Kyrou, right?
And plus,
bring the Ric Flair impersonation back.
Honestly, I want to say this again, and I know I've said this a bunch before. I genuinely hope that wherever Jordan Kyrou goes, wherever he goes, he is successful.
Yeah.
I feel as though that he has been a Blue that has just absolutely wore it as this team has struggled. And I think that it's not all the way, but I think some of it is unfair. And also too, biggest part, I'm so goddamn tired of talking about it and friggin' hearing about it. I'm done.
We said it on BK and Ferrario when I think it was July 2nd, once the no trade clause kicked in. We said it on the show. We're like, can we finally put this thing to bed?
Nope.
We're done. We're done with it. And I think it took 2 months into the season when it was right back up again.
And the healthy scratch.
Yeah, the healthy scratch that came with it.
Yeah, so thanks to Zane for the water there. But
it's coming in huge.
Just magically appears.
I do think it's a situation where there's perhaps some frustration on the Jordan Kyrou side of things. If you look at the underlying numbers, I think there's some creation there in terms of what he's doing offensively and among the top 6 forwards on the team, but yet he's 6th in terms of playing time, in terms of minutes per game, and so I think there's some frustration on his side, and if that leads to, I feel like it could be different or better somewhere else, then I would believe that they would let the Blues know that, or if the Blues do call them about a potential trade or situation where they want to move him, I think that Kyrou would be perhaps open to that. So I think that's probably where it stands. And, I hate to keep repeating what we're all saying is, can a big deal like that get done before the deadline, 10, 11 days? They can, I suppose, but it seems like to find the right return and to be happy with it from the Blues perspective and to get Kyrou's okay on where he would be going, possessing that full no trade clause, that would be difficult, but we'll see. But I do agree with what you guys are saying and kind of what the climate is with the situation is that, maybe Jordan Kyrou does see a better situation somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's just it's a gut feel. Something happens by the deadline with him. And I don't know if it's just because of all of the rumors that have been out there and it feels like his name is flying off the charts, and I don't know how to math or judge this one out, but it feels like every time you see rumors that continue to bring one person's name up, that guy doesn't get moved at the deadline. So I could be completely off my rocker with this. It just feels like it's one of those things that needs to just finally hit its conclusion, which is good for the player, good for the team. It's one of those healthy splits that just needs to happen. And if it doesn't happen at the deadline, I agree, because Jeff was the one that said it on his podcast. It just really feels as if Jordan Kyrou won't be a part of the team going into next season. And again, I'm not saying that was Jeff Merrick's words on his podcast.
Who do you think could be, where do you think a good fit for him would be? And I know in the past we've talked about Washington, we've talked about Buffalo. Is there anybody else that really seems to make sense? What about, and I meant to ask this, and I'm so sorry if maybe he plays on the wrong side, but would Los Angeles potentially be a destination with what happened to Fiala?
People bring that up with Fiala. I don't see how that happens, and it's not because I don't think Kyrou would want to play there or they would want Kyrou.
Money.
I think it would be money, but it's also, what do they have to offer you?
Because the cupboards are bare in LA,
they just traded their best prospect away in that Green Tree that they traded for Panarin. So like I look at the Kings and say, are they going to trade you Byfield? Are they going to trade you Brandt Clark? Why would they do that?
Right, that does them no good.
That's a lateral move for them. So if I'm the Blues, as much as it may make sense, I don't see how that happens. I think Seattle has to be in that conversation because they were tied to him in the offseason. And we brought this up on the last podcast. I really wonder if New Jersey is one of those teams. And it's only because I told you guys that report. I think it was James Murphy that said apparently New Jersey is looking to shake things up with their roster and see if there's some type of move that can do that.
Yeah, and just keep in mind, all these teams that you mentioned are probably the handful of teams that should be in the conversation, but just 8.125 million.
Yeah.
And so, you can't just move out a first round pick and a prospect who's not on the payroll yet to the Blues and fit that 8.25, granted prorated, under the cap going into the playoffs, which, this year you have basically a quote unquote cap.
You have to have that roster compliant to the cap for the starting roster for the playoff games.
Yeah. So they have to be players coming back to the Blues.
I'm going to say something probably stupider than anything I've said on this podcast before. Oh, just wait. There are so many things I want the Blues to do that I'm not exactly, and I'm being honest when I say this, I'm not exactly sure what the best course of action for the team is. You know what I'm saying? With the potential of Benner and Falk and Shin and Thomas and all of these other guys, I don't know the right combination of sort of these things that I do want. I just know that I don't like what I see and I want it shaken up. Yeah. But also I don't want to do that in an irresponsible, friggin' ridiculous sort of way either. So I get kind of caught in this, I'm really excited for the trade deadline, but for what?
Which I think it would be irresponsible if they just traded 7 guys at this year's deadline. Like that feels like it would be, it feels like there's a now group of players and later on group of players in terms of trades. Like, again, we've said this multiple times on the podcast. I don't feel as if they can return with the same looking roster next year. Mm-hmm. So there are moves now that I think can be made, like the Shens and the Falks. And if there's interest to Sundqvist, I really wonder about Pius Suter now because of how good of a tournament he had. And then there's the later trades that can happen of, do they reignite the flames with Thomas or Kyrou? Does it get to those points? The one that I really wonder about, and the only reason I bring this up is because Bruce Garach, I believe his name is. He covers the Ottawa Senators. Put out there that a league executive told him that Carlo, Dougie Hamilton, Connor Murphy, and both Justin Falk and Colton Parayko are likely available. I don't think we've talked Colton Parayko. I feel like I nipped that one in the bud right away. At least my personal preference. You can't trade that guy if you think you're going to be competitive within the next couple of years. Should we be talking more about him because of the level of interest that would be around a 6'6", 32-year-old defenseman?
Yeah. So, Bruce is good. What he does. And if he heard Parayko, I just think that falls under everybody's available.
Yeah.
So, whether it's Robert Thomas or Colton Parayko, who hasn't been mentioned a lot the past few years, everybody's available. Call us. We'll talk to you about him. I wonder, and I think I want to circle back to what you said a second ago. What would be the perfect trade deadline for the Blues? And we'll get to that in 1 second. But, I wonder if the Blues, yes, they want to be competitive, but I wonder if there's a bit of a shift from we want to be competitive and make the playoffs this year, talking about going into this year and continue that next year, or if they're going to fall back a little bit from that. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because, if you trade a Parayko, you're going to fall back from that a little bit, but you're okay with that because you've taken several years off the books of a guy who's going to be mid-30s when that deal is up, when you have a Juracek coming up, when you have a Mayu who you think can be a top 4 guy, and whether it's just that top right defensive position or it's with another position, okay, maybe we're not going to be as competitive next year. It could be trading Pius Suter, who I think can keep you competitive next year. But if you've taken the mindset that we're going to take a little soft step back, then I think it opens up the idea to trade those guys, whereas you didn't want to do that the past couple years.
Why is he, when he is saying this and talking and saying these things that make sense, why is it making my stomach turn? and here's the thing, though, man, and I understand completely what you're saying, JR, but, man, if you move that dude, that's 25 minutes a night or what have you, that you have to replace. And I just
on top of moving Falk, by the way, because if they move him, that's two guys that eat basically 90% of your games.
Right. And I'm not saying that's going to happen. What I'm saying is,
it does make sense.
What are you getting back from Parayko? Is that a 24-year-old left shot defenseman who's going to help you for the next 8 or 10 years?
That's the good point.
And so then I think once we see what a deal could look like, or if there is even a deal, now all of a sudden you say, okay, it sucks losing those 25 minutes a night, but they're going to get replaced by somebody.
Somebody's going to eat 25.
And the Blues are going to be okay, but now look what you got. Yeah. Or, and it could be the same with any player.
It does really feel like, and we've talked about this before on the pod, they're shifting the core from where, like 27 to 32 to 22 to 25 years old. Mm-hmm. Like they're moving it back a couple of years so that it's all circled around the Snuggerud, Neighbors, Holloway, Dvorsky, Carbonneau, Jiricek, that age bracket, Broberg. And, if you look around the successful teams, Dallas is a great example of this. Now, they have made outside moves that bring it in, but the nucleus that they have, man, all of those guys went through the trials and tribulations together to get where they're at right now, right? Like all of those guys, whether it was Rope, Hintz, Miro Heiskanen, Wyatt Johnston, Sagan, Ben, all of them, Harley, went through where they were to where they're at right now. And it was that same core of players. I do really wonder if that's the mindset that Steen and Armstrong have of, let's move this to a different age bracket so these guys can go through everything for the next 3 years.
And also, too, isn't Colton only making like $6.5 million a year?
Money, and he could play to the end of the contract and be fine. It's just if you're in a position where you're shifting and there's interest, you have to check into it. And if one of them fits what you're doing, then you can execute it. There has to be a shift. That's the bottom line.
Yep.
This roster has to have a shift. Alex hates my analogies. We are
or love them.
We are rehabbing a house. And at the end of this summer, the house isn't going to be that beautiful kitchen, beautiful whatever. You'll get there in a couple years. But right now, all this old plumbing and everything has to be torn out, and there has to be some studs nailed in. And studs, how do you like that?
God, you did that one on purpose.
That's well done.
There's got to be some studs
named
in.
Carbonneau, and
there's got to be some drywall put up.
Yeah.
See, I don't know how to do that.
That was terrible.
You got to tape.
Come on, man. You did studs, and then you went to drywall.
Dude, he was on such a roll, man.
So that's what has to happen. And so to circle back to what we were talking about a second ago, we'll probably have to write a story about this, but like, what's the perfect trade deadline for the Blues?
Yeah.
The perfect trade deadline for the Blues, I think, and I'm just being totally honest here, is as much as I love what Braden Shen brings to the team, if there's significant interest and he'll waive no trade, you have to move him. Justin Falk, you have to capitalize absolutely right now. You can talk about a Sundqvist, you're not going to get much back for him anyway, so it doesn't matter. But also, I think you have to seriously entertain the Jordan Kyrou, negotiate talks, whatever, with his camp and with whatever interest is out there. And if there's a chance to move him, I think that sends you into that shift that we're talking about. You probably hang on to Robert Thomas unless you get overwhelmed. You can't move Pavel Buchnevich, I don't think. And at some point, whether it's at the trade deadline or this summer, you're probably moving on from Jordan Binnington, and Joel Hofer takes over. And then in the next year or so, Neighbors grabs a bigger piece. Snuggerud starts, putting the one-timer in the back of the net. Dvorsky starts, ascending from the Olympics. Jiricek comes in here and looks like a top-paired defenseman. Like, that's what's going to happen in the next 12 months.
Let me ask you guys this, though, because I had this thought, because I can almost guarantee fans, when play resumes on Thursday, are going to be saying you have to continue to be bad. And if the team plays well, fans are going to be like, what are you doing? You need to get a good pick. So how much of them shifting and needing to move towards the younger group, how much of their future success rides on them having a top 2 pick in this year's draft?
It would be great. The only thing is you can't guarantee anything.
Yeah.
You can finish number 1 overall in terms of the pick, and
the pick turns out to be Nail Yakubov.
Vancouver leaps you.
Sorry, Nail.
Yeah, Vancouver leaps you.
Yeah, or you get pushed back.
Draft a number 1 pick, and you get the year, New York took Lafreniere, and then it just doesn't pan out. Anything could happen. So, yeah, you got to finish the season as strong as you can. Believe me, we all get the, they won, son of a gun. That kills
Right, yeah.
So that's what's going to happen. But you just want to see development from the young players. And if you do make some deals, which you expect they do, that the Blues have done their due diligence, and the players that they're bringing in, it was the best deal they could get.
Well, let's do this. Let's take one more break, come back and wrap up the Last Minute Blues podcast. As a matter of fact there, guys, as we do our final segment here for the showgram, draft lottery odds. Vancouver Canucks, 25.5%. Blues, 13.5%. Rangers, 11.5%. Flames, 9.5%. Jets, 8.5. I don't exactly completely know totally what this means. I just want them to get the number 1 pick.
Yeah, I think everybody does.
I just, whatever kind of voodoo magic thing, whoever I need to pray to, whatever we need to do between now and the time the draft lottery happens, I am absolutely willing to do it.
That's why I'm fascinated once this trade deadline, the dust settles and you see who sold off pieces. You'll get an idea, because I wonder what Winnipeg does. I don't think they can sell off much, but does Winnipeg go into a little bit of shutdown mode? Florida, there's a lot of speculation of, does Florida move Sergei Bobrovsky? Do they shut down Brad Marchand? Do they shut down Matthew Tkachuk and just say this is going to be a lost season for us? I really wonder if more teams fall into that bottom dweller race after the trade deadline, and then it just becomes more of, what do the Blues look like? Look, with Holloway coming back, Thomas now healthy from what they're telling us with that surgery that he had, the procedure that he had, they're going to probably win games that people are going to get like, are you freaking kidding me? I don't think they're going to go on a 14, 15 game win streak, because I think by the deadline, you're going to see pieces shipped out, and they play a lot of games on the road. And that was the other thing that Jim Montgomery kind of hammered in on yesterday when I was at Skate, was like, we've got to figure out, the Blues, how to manage games better on the road. I don't think that just all of a sudden gets fixed. And then when you trade off veterans and put younger players in that position, mistakes are going to happen. But I really think this one's going to come down to, you're going to be a bottom 5 team, and then you just pray to whoever you pray to that draft lottery moves you up instead of backwards.
This draft lottery that is going to give us a bunch of stomach fits between now and then, it actually, though, it is a good thing, though, because then that way you don't have teams that are intentionally, then you don't have a bunch of teams that are just intentionally.
Yeah, you don't have what Vancouver's doing. We're just shutting everybody down, trading everybody away, and saying, my conspiracy theory has always been this way. The NHL draft is rigged, and the NHL draft is going to award the team that they deem not responsible. They deem that deserves that first overall pick. So they're going to look at Vancouver and be like, nah, you traded all these pieces away. They're going to look at the Rangers. Nah, you basically put a memo out saying we're rebuilding this team. It's going to go to a team that ethically tanked.
Why do you got to say stuff like that?
Well, that's a good thing for the Blues.
Well, no, for sure. But maybe we did something that
pissed somebody off down the road.
Off Gary Bettman.
He was here yesterday. He talked with JR. He loves St. Louis.
I never believed in the rigged draft lottery until
Chicago.
Shaquille O'Neal tells the story.
Oh, yeah.
Did you hear that one?
Yeah, I heard that one.
He says that David Stern, 2 days before the draft lottery for NBA, came up to Shaquille and said, do you want to play in a cold weather climate or a warm? And I think it was Orlando, and
I forget which one the other one was.
Toronto? Or
maybe.
Yeah, and so he said warm, and 2 days later he goes to Orlando, so...
Shaq Diesel, baby.
Well, I still remember the draft that Chicago went from 13th or 14th overall. They skyrocketed up to get the 3rd overall pick. Come on. You can't tell me that's not a thing.
See, I try to not be a conspiracy theory guy.
I don't either until the draft comes in.
Then you like slowly chip away at it. And then it makes me think that maybe I am.
And then Pittsburgh with Crosby coming out of the lockout and how he goes to the Penguins and that whole conspiracy theory. We saw the Rangers get the first overall pick. Now, all of my conspiracy theory can be knocked down saying, well, then how the hell did the Buffalo Sabres get so many first overall picks?
Okay.
Yeah. And you guys, isn't the story, I got it right, that with the Bedard draft lottery, when they pull up the number combination that tells you who gets the pick, it's a 4-digit. So let's just say it's 3972. Well, that's what Bedard was. And the Blues had 3973 or, 1 digit.
Yeah. So tell me it's not rigged.
Dudes, I was feeling like pretty kind of okay. And now I don't. Well, so thanks a lot.
Here's how I look at it. I don't think they give it to Vancouver. I don't think you give it to the Rangers. I think it's St. Louis. Like, who do they love the most? St. Louis. How many Winter Classics have the Blues been in the last 10 years?
What if this team went on just an absolute heater?
Don't say it, Donnie.
But it would defy logic, and everything this team does seemingly defies freaking logic to me.
I know we joke. I don't think Doug allows that to happen. I think the moment that starts, people give it moved. Is that terrible to say?
No, I mean, I don't think it's terrible to say. I mean, I think that it is a reality that happens around us. And as a business, I think they would be looking at it as a business decision to do whatever those things would entail. Especially in small market St. Louis, man. I don't know.
I don't think it could happen if God was in charge.
I know. You're right.
Don't you think we'd be better if God was in charge?
At least early on.
Well, let me clarify. Sorry, because I know my pastor listens to this. God is in charge. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, and there you go, JR.
Sorry.
I guess I just specifically meant as the title of the general manager of the St. Louis Blues. In charge completely.
And we all say amen.
We got to wrap this thing up before we get ourselves in any more trouble.
Politics, religion. We're on a roll.
Now I got to go to communion.
It's also, I can't wait for it to be a time in our collective lives where we can talk about Russia and the Olympics and literally use more than 8 words because we're afraid of pissing someone off.
Well, that's going to happen no matter what.
I can't wait for those days. I will be out of radio when it happens. All right, guys. Also, too, you know what? I was going to ask you this off the air, but I'll ask you this on the air because whatever. How do we kind of go about doing the show next week with the trade deadline, I believe, Friday? Like we kind of be a little mobile there, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll kind of have to see because the problem is the trade deadline on Friday is Friday afternoon. It's like what, 2:00, I think is when it is.
Yeah, I'll be
Eastern.
on the road with the team.
Yeah. So I think we'll probably do a night or the eve of trade deadline and then probably do a reaction on Monday when the dust settles or sometime early on the week, because if things happen at the deadline, we're going to want some type of reaction to it.
I just want to let you guys know that throughout the course of the trade deadline, and even though you guys will be busy doing your jobs, which you do so very well, I'm available to help however I can.
That. Good. I'll have you on pregame for those 9:00 games that are coming up. No, takesies, backsies. You already said you're going to help out in any way.
It is the Last Minute Blues podcast, and as always, it's brought to you by Blue Note Roofing, siding, and gutters, your St. Louis roofing experts. Visit BlueNoteRoofingSTL.com for a free inspection. JR, Alex, Donnie Fandango, thanks for listening to the Last Minute Blues podcast, and as always, let's go Blues.
The Last Minute Blues podcast on 101 ESPN
is presented by Blue Note Roofing, siding, and gutters, your St. Louis roofing experts. Visit BlueNoteRoofingSTL.com for free inspection.